We're back, the champ and the chump once again.
Who's the champ and who's the chump, man?
You know exactly who the chump is. We were debating, and we might as well hit the mic. Lamar Jackson, you think they should pay him? I think they shouldn't. Sell me this pen.
Look, I think that you have to look at the available options. If you're a team like the Baltimore Ravens, you don't have many options to turn to. By the time you figure this out, and hypothetically you don't reach some type of an agreement, and then you decide to let him go and hit the open market, Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr are probably going to be gone. There are not a lot of good options unless they decide to go with a rookie, and that is going to set back the timetable for them to compete. I know your concern is injury related, and my counterpoint to that is what Randall Cunningham did in his career when he shifted more of a focus to being more of a pocket passing quarterback. I think Lamar is good enough of an athlete and a football player to make that transition. And with Todd Monken, not Greg Roman, who was calling plays deliberately for him to be a runner, I think Todd Monken's going to open his game up a lot more to be a better passer rather than a runner.
This has nothing to do with how I feel about Lamar as a player. When he plays, he's an MVP caliber player.
Yes.
He's won it. So to say that he's not, when on the field, the top 10 quarterback in the league is blasphemous. At times, he's top 5, and on certain days, when he's running as well as he runs, when his passing game is working, he could be the best. Now, he missed 5 games last year in the regular season and the playoff game. And you could say, well, for his contract, he didn't want to play that playoff game. If he was healthy, he would have played. Like, we've seen him be an ultimate competitor. Yeah. He's a professional athlete at the highest level. If he really wants the contract, if that's like, the stipulation, then you go and you play that game and you get the contract. If you can, which he couldn't.
But
he missed 4 games the year before. Like this, when this Ravens team, when he plays, this Ravens team is one of the best teams in the league.
Yes.
When he plays, he's one of the best players in the league. But he doesn't play. He missed 4 critical games in the back-to-back season, 5 and 4, and then the playoffs this year. This roster is clearly good enough to get to the playoffs without him, or at least ship it there a little bit.
Players suffer injuries, and I think that this year's circumstance was a little bit different, where he was hurt, might have been possibly available. But if you're in a contract situation where you're either negotiating with your current team, or for Lamar's case, where he needs to acknowledge he might be on the open market and might be negotiating with other teams, him as damaged goods is not going to be sellable for that $200 million deal at all. So for him to make that decision and realize that his team probably wasn't going to win that game against the Cincinnati Bengals, that's a business decision. I can't fault him for that. But his availability is going to be better. I think it can be better. He needs to change the way that he is playing the position, because he's not a running back. He can't be playing it like a running back.
That's what makes him great. That's what makes Lamar Jackson. Justin Fields going for 1,000 yards. Lamar Jackson was the 1,000-yard man.
Yeah,
36 tutties and 9 picks.
That's not sustainable.
Then I can't pay him. We did it before.
But he's good enough of a quarterback and a player that he doesn't need to only play that way. He's been in the league long enough, and they have an offensive coordinator who's going to set him up for success. We saw the results he was able to produce, Todd Monken, with Stetson freaking Bennett.
That's college football, dude.
But you don't think
it's a different sport.
It's still a pro-style offense. There are a similar offensive approach is going to be brought to that scheme. And I know that Lamar is going to flourish in it, because it's a lot of rollouts. It's a lot of throwing on the run. A lot of that is going to suit perfectly for Lamar.
Stetson Bennett was, I know you don't like him, but he was a good enough college quarterback. And that team, whether you like Broderick Jones or not, he's a first round offensive lineman. You have 2 borderline. You've definitely 1 first round tight end. You maybe have a second in Darnell Washington.
You don't.
Sure, second or third round tight end.
Okay.
And Darnell Washington. You have crazy talent across the board, more talent than most teams have, period. On just the offensive side of the football, if you're Todd Monken in Georgia. It's it's the same sport of football, but it's a completely different sport. And every pro football player will tell you that. It's different. But it's going to be interesting to see how he translates from college to the NFL. Mm-hmm. And not all this is Lamar's fault. 2 years ago, the team had multiple injuries at running back. They traded Orlando Brown. They had multiple injuries on defense. They'd taken Rashad Bateman. and that pick hasn't worked out. They took Hollywood Brown, and that pick hasn't worked out. And Lamar's defense, like, they haven't done a good enough job around him. It's not just his fault, this circumstance. They've, as an organization, put him and themselves in this tough place. So he's injured. They haven't done a great job with roster construction on offense around him. So it's unfortunate, but if you're looking at this like a business, which it is, you can't invest in potentially damaged goods on the chance that he fixes it somehow and changes his game. It's not his game.
I'd rather have a broken Ferrari than a high quality, brand new Toyota Camry.
No, you wouldn't, dude. You would not.
Because I can fix the Ferrari. I don't want the Toyota Camry.
You don't know if you can. You can't die on the hill that this guy is going to play 13, 12 games a year and not the most important ones.
I'd rather take the risk of trying to fix a really good quarterback and making sure that he's healthy, and if he is healthy and available, than to invest in going after somebody who's going to be mediocre. Because that's my whole point, is I don't know who is the next best option. There isn't. If you are as good of a team as we think the Ravens, I think the Ravens are a good football team. Yeah, good roster.
Despite what I said about them getting offensive skill players around Lamar Jackson. I think Mark Andrews is a good tight end. If Rashad Bateman could play in the same boat as Lamar, he's still on a rookie contract. He's good. But that's a big if as well now. Dobbins is back and so on and so forth. Their offensive line is solid. They always do a good job drafting offensive linemen and drafting for defense.
Right.
Like they let guys fall to them. Kyle Hamilton pick was great. I think this team is in a situation where Lamar may have to play on the tag. They have to tag him. They can't pay him.
He probably will play on the tag because of what the situation.
Or you have to trade him. Or you have to go to the Atlanta Falcons and be like, hey, you guys are in a winnable division. Or the Saints or the Buccaneers and be like, you guys are in a winnable division. Give me go for the if you look at Deshaun Watson, you could try to make that trade. Maybe not as egregious because people looked at that and go, hey, he really didn't perform, at least in his first season. And granted, he didn't really have the playbook as the year progressed. And there was other stuff and other parameters. He had to get his feet wet again because he hadn't played in a year and a half. But you can go to the Falcons, the Buccaneers, and the Saints, or even the Panthers in a very winnable division and go, hey, we'll give you Lamar Jackson for a pair of firsts and a pair of seconds. And then you retool. You may not take a quarterback, but you continue to rebuild and grow the roster. And then you bring a guy and look, yes, we've seen Patrick Mahomes, Herbert, and Josh Allen guys in the AFC, these first-round talents, the franchise guys. But we've also seen in the NFC, Jalen Hurts is a guy that nobody really wanted or nobody had faith in. And the Eagles took a chance on him. And
he's a great athlete.
He's a great athlete. And
he fits the current mold of the NFL. There's a reason why he fell is that a lot of teams are archaic in their approach on how they're developing and drafting quarterbacks. And Lamar is the future. Guys like Lamar are...
He's the present, but they did. And unfortunately for Jalen Hurts, around him, they had solid run game, great offensive line. They went and got A.J. Brown. They went
have all that on the Ravens roster. I just don't. They
didn't do a good enough job helping Lamar.
Find me who is going to replace him. Who steps in and takes over for that team.
I'm not saying it can be anybody because it can't. Maybe it is Jimmy G. And again, you run into the same problem with injury.
Stop.
But it's way cheaper.
Yeah, I don't want Jimmy Garoppolo. No,
it's way cheaper. You're not it's the investment, dude. Because look at this. Look at all the $200 million investments. Yes, Patrick Mahomes has worked out. Russell Wilson in year one, flop. Kyler Murray, unfortunately, due to injury and his style of play right now the contract is a flop. Deshaun Watson in his first year, the contract is a flop. Aaron Rodgers, even in Green Bay, the contract is a flop. A lot of these contracts, if you are going to invest, just because you are the franchise guy doesn't mean you need to make the top tier money. Daniel Jones going to get $45 million a year is egregious.
That's a separate issue. But I don't think that looking at it from that angle works of who's gotten paid the most recently, have they been successful? I look at who's won the Super Bowl over the past couple of years. It's been Matthew Stafford, who's on a big contract. It's been Patrick Mahomes, who's on a big contract. It's more often than not guys that are on big contracts. You have to pay the best players in the league. You have to. Otherwise, you can slop around with guys like Jimmy G.
Yeah, but there's that Matthew Stafford. Yes, they won. And I think the Rams team was great. I think they caught a bit of luck, which you need to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Every time.
But they even deliberately traded.
They sold their soul to the devil.
But they deliberately traded away Jared Goff, who's a slightly above average.
Who's better right now, him or Stafford? Who would you rather have going to the season?
I'd still rather have Matthew Stafford.
Crazy.
Even with him,
it's crazy.
He was hurt.
Exactly.
He was injured.
Exactly.
But why are we getting caught up on injury? Injuries happen.
Because what's the best ability in sports?
Jared Goff could go out week 1, first play of the season,
and then
break his leg.
And then you're right.
But anything can happen.
You're right. But right now,
Lamar
it's not
Jackson
the case.
could go rush for have 400 rushing attempts and never suffer an injury again. I think that there's so much chance when it comes down to injury, and I think it's not a good.
Could I pay Lamar Jackson $130 million, $140 for 4 years? I could do that. I can't pay him $240 million.
But he's earned it. He's won an MVP. He's gotten the team to the playoffs.
3 years ago.
Again, I admit that he's been injured, but if you shift his style of play, I think that he's worth the money.
If I can't pay a guy that much, it's just like from a GM, you're sinking your entire payroll into one guy. That's what it becomes.
I think,
and he needs to be as good as Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Burrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, quite frankly, like I'm giving Herbert the money that Mahomes gets is crazy. Like we saw stats of like Mahomes has taken up the largest percent of a contract on someone's cap room he's an outlier. Exactly. So we can't. People use that as the measuring stick, and it can't be used as that because he is the ultimate franchise guy.
Yeah, but. Again,
you saw this issue in the NBA. Like people just like threw money at guys. Like because he's a max guy.
That's a little different. The cap structure.
It's the same thing as Zion. Honestly, Zion is unbelievable.
Yeah,
but he doesn't play. I can't give that guy $200 million.
He plays a lot less than Lamar has played, though.
But it's the same thing. It's like, all right, is he going to get hurt again and again? It's like I'm now dealing with back-to-back years where a Russian quarterback has missed 4+ games.
Here's the difference, though, is that Zion as a player, you can't really change the way he plays the game. You hypothetically could, but the way that he's physically built is why he's getting injured.
You can change Lamar. If you can change Lamar, you can change him.
I think that changing Lamar is very likely. Greg Roman deliberately called an offense that it was a lot of quarterback designed runs, and I think that Monken's not that type of guy. I don't think they're going to call that.
I hope. Look, I want Lamar to succeed. I love watching him. He's an amazing player. Don't get that lost. It's just if I'm the Baltimore Ravens, I don't think it's crazy for them to be reserved and holding back on paying this guy. And maybe Monken can shift the offense, and maybe they're not doing these quarterback design runs, but that also takes a bit away of what makes Lamar Jackson special, makes Lamar Jackson.
But he doesn't. I understand that the running aspect is what makes him special, but he doesn't need that to succeed. He is a fantastic athlete. He's a fantastic football player, and I think that you can reel him back a little bit. A lot of the best quarterbacks in the NFL that are great runners have learned that the hard way, and I think that he's learned that the hard way, and you need to figure out, hey, I can use this to pick up first downs. I can use this to pick up huge gains, but I can't rely on it on a play-to-play basis. I need to instead play the position. I need to rely on my receivers. I think that he's good enough of an athlete. It's not like this is Tim Tebow out there. Tim Tebow had no idea what he was doing.
Again, if there was no injury issues, this would be a no-brainer, no question. And if they were even thinking twice on this, I would think it is the dumbest thing, arguably, I've seen in years in a contract in sports. But there are injury issues. And for me, I look at this and I see it not only this sport, but in multiple sports, when guys get hurt, like Giancarlo Stanton on the Yankees, like the guy just gets hurt. When he plays, can he hit 40, 50 home runs? Yeah, but he doesn't play enough. These guys, like you got to be able to. It's sad, but like that's the way it is, man. If I'm gonna give a monster contract out to a dude, I need to be sure that this is, or as close to sure that this is gonna work. And if there's any issue or doubt in my mind, I can't do it. And call me. I am very reserved when it comes to this. Weirdly, I just am.
No,
I see what you're saying.
I get it. You want your investment to be on the field.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
That's it. All right, champ and the chump. We'll see you guys next time.
Sure.